No one expected a quiet morning at a small-town diner to turn into a lesson the whole country would talk about when a racist cop decided to confront two peaceful black veterans over nothing. He didn't realize who he was messing with or how quickly the tables would turn. It was a quiet Tuesday morning at Sally's Diner, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and the coffee never ran out. Sunlight poured through the large front windows, casting a warm glow across the checkered floor and red leather booths. At the corner table, two elderly black men sat side by side, sharing stories over steaming mugs and scrambled eggs. Their worn jackets bore subtle patches, symbols of honor, years of service, and battles fought overseas. They weren't loud or causing a scene, just two old friends enjoying a peaceful morning. But the peace didn't last long. The bell over the door jingled as a police officer stepped in. He took a quick glance around the diner, but his eyes quickly settled on the veterans. His jaw tightened. With a stiff posture and narrowed eyes, he walked directly to their table. "IDs," he said, without a greeting. The veterans looked at each other, confused. "Is there a problem, officer?" one of them asked politely. "You're loitering," the cop replied coldly. "We don't want any trouble in here." All around them, forks froze mid-air. Conversations stopped. The soft clinking of dishes was replaced by uncomfortable silence. The tension was thick. The veterans remained calm, but the insult stung. They had served their country with honor, and now they were being treated like criminals in their own hometown. Sally, the owner, stood behind the counter with a worried look, watching the scene unfold. She had known these men for years, good, decent people who had risked their lives for others. Her hand hovered near the phone, unsure whether to call for help or step in herself. What began as a simple breakfast was quickly turning into something much bigger. A moment no one in that diner would ever forget. The diner, once filled with the hum of morning conversations, fell completely silent. Every eye was now on the corner booth. The officer stood tall, arms crossed, staring down at the two veterans like they were suspects in a crime. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes people hold their breath without realizing. Even the waitress near the counter had stopped pouring coffee, her hand trembling slightly as she watched. The younger of the two veterans leaned back calmly, his voice steady but firm. "Officer, we're just having breakfast. We come here every week. Is there something specific you're accusing us of?" The officer didn't answer the question. Instead, he doubled down, his voice sharper this time. "You're disturbing the peace, and I need to know who you are." His tone wasn't just commanding, it was filled with quiet aggression. A few people in the diner began to whisper, confused and uncomfortable. A mother pulled her young daughter closer, shielding her from the rising confrontation. A teenager near the window quietly lifted his phone, hitting record. This didn't feel right. Everyone could sense it. The older veteran who had remained silent, now sat up straighter and spoke. "Son, we've served this country longer than you've probably been alive. We've earned the right to sit here, same as anyone else." His voice wasn't angry, it was calm, but heavy with meaning. The officer seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if realizing he was out of place, but his pride kept him rooted. Sally finally stepped from behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron as she slowly approached. Her face was pale, but her voice was clear. "Officer, I think you're making a mistake." The silence deepened. The next move could change everything. The officer squared his shoulders as Sally spoke, clearly not expecting anyone to question his actions. He turned slightly toward her and said, "Ma'am, this is official police business. I'd advise you to stay out of it." But his voice lacked the force it had just moments ago. The room was still, every person inside waiting to see what would happen next. The two veterans didn't move. They exchanged a look, one that spoke of years of experience, of battles fought, not just on foreign soil but in their own country, for dignity and equality. Without a word, the older veteran reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, calmly, he placed a small round medal on the table. The light caught its surface, a medal of honor. Gasps rippled through the room. "You want to know who I am?" he said, locking eyes with the officer. "That medal says it all. I earned that fighting for this country while people like you questioned my right to exist." His friend, eyes steady, reached into his wallet and pulled out a faded photo of himself in uniform and a purple heart. He laid it beside the medal. "You think we're threats? We were willing to die for people we didn't even know. That includes you." The officer's face shifted from control to confusion, then to shame. He glanced around and saw the phones recording, the faces staring. Not one showed support. Some looked angry, others deeply disappointed. Sally stepped closer and said, firmly, "You came in here looking for trouble where there was none. These men are heroes. You owe them respect." The cop looked down at the table, then back at the door. For a moment he seemed small, just a man in a uniform, out of his depth, and the fire had just begun to burn. The silence that followed was deafening. The officer stood frozen, the weight of the moment sinking in. Around him, the diner buzzed with quiet disbelief. Customers who had been strangers moments ago were now united, eyes locked on The man who had tried to misuse his badge, the quiet strength of the veterans had shifted everything. They didn't raise their voices, they didn't fight, they simply showed the truth. And that truth was louder than any command. Sally stood, firm by the veterans' table, her voice unwavering. You've embarrassed yourself, officer. These men didn't disturb the peace you did. This is their place just like it's yours, maybe more. Her words cut through the thick air like a knife. More heads nodded. A man near the back spoke. Up, I served too. That medal isn't handed out for nothing. A young woman chimed in. You treated them like criminals, but they're heroes. The officer's face was tight with shame. His authority, once intimidating, now felt meaningless. In the face of the respect these men commanded, he looked toward the door, as if searching for an escape. The teenager by the window was still recording, and now others had joined in. Social media was about to hear this story and he knew it. One of the veterans spoke again, softly but clearly. Respect isn't demanded with a badge, it's earned, through actions. That line seemed to hang in the air. The officer gave one last look at the medals on the table, then at the two calm men who had shown more dignity in minutes than he had all morning. Without another word, he turned and walked out. No apology, just silence. But the damage was done and so was the lesson. Everyone there had seen it. Real power doesn't come from fire, it comes from truth. As the officer stepped out into the sunlight and the door closed behind him, a strange calm settled over the diner. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, a quiet applause began, not loud or forced, but heartfelt and real. It started with a single man near the counter, then spread across the room. People stood to their feet, clapping not out of pity, but out of deep respect. The two veterans didn't smile or boast, they simply nodded, humbled by the support they had earned, without asking. Sally refilled their coffee without a word, sliding the mugs gently onto the table as tears welled up in her eyes. On the house, she whispered, voice trembling. One of the veterans reached over and patted her hand. Thank you, Sally, for standing up when it mattered. She nodded back, unable to speak. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, hesitantly walked over from a nearby table, holding his mother's hand. He looked up at the older man and said softly, "Thank you for your service." The veteran's face softened as he reached down and shook the boy's hand, replying, "We did it so you could grow up in a better world." More customers came over, offering words of gratitude, sharing their own family stories of service. The anger and fear that had filled the room earlier had been replaced with something far more powerful: unity, respect, and truth. As the veterans gathered their things to leave, the older one looked around the diner and said, "This isn't about medals or uniforms, it's about dignity. We all deserve that." With quiet strength they stepped out into the day, their heads high. Inside the diner, no one would ever forget what happened. A simple breakfast had become a lasting lesson for everyone. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. Subscribe to Deep Wounds for more powerful true stories that leave a lasting impact.